Hello, 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 everyone. So, this is how Tim Ballard searched for and rescued and trafficked children. And so, this comes from a news article that is Blaze News, and Blaze News is owned by Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck is very much part of this story, really, in my opinion, because he has not only supported Tim and OUR, but he has also supported him financially. So, and they're like in on business. He owns the Mercury One nonprofit organization, which is one of the, I don't want to say shell companies because it's not a shell, but it's all a ruse, in my opinion. That's where I'm at. I keep looking for things, and reading things and learning new things about this whole case or whatever it is, this whole ruse. It is a ruse. I think from its very inception, it has been a ruse. Just further and further we go, the more and more it seems to be that way. And so I just kind of want to know what y'all think, where you're at on this. It very much does tie into our story, and I say our story, not the OUR story too, but our story with Tylee and JJ and Charles, Tammy and Joe, with Lori and Chad, with the church, with all the involvement, the same people. It's just an ongoing investigation, in my opinion. So it says Blaze News investigate the psychic who guided Tim Ballard and some Operation Underground Railroad missions for years. It says last month, Blaze News published a report that took a deep dive into the allegations of sexual misconduct leveled at Tim Ballard, the former federal agent who founded Operation Underground Railroad a decade ago with the expressed goal of rescuing victims of human trafficking. Blaze News has examined another former OUR employee who has played a significant role in Ballard's life and in many OUR operations, Janet Russon, a woman who purports to commune with spirits. Okay, it says, based on the information Blaze News has received from 8 former OUR associates, Russon has had undue influence on Ballard and therefore on OUR operations for many years and perhaps even a decade or more. These witnesses uniformly told us that Ballard speaks to Russon almost daily, sometimes even multiple times per day. One individual guessed that during some busy periods, Russon worked nearly 80 hours per week. That is a hefty psychic week. That's a whole lot of communing. That's a whole lot of scrying and invoking, which is basically, from my understanding and from everything that I've researched, is basically what they do in the temple. And I'm not trying to offend anybody or anything, but it just seems to be that way. And I've always felt that too. I'm like, what do they do in the temple? And it's not that I want to stomp on anything that's sacred to anyone else. But on the other hand, my family was sacred to me. So it's kind of like tit for tat. Anyway, so it's just always bothered me when people convicted murderers, kids are missing, things like that. And yet you find out all these women, all these people that are associated in the same exact circle as Tim Ballard, Chad Daybell, Lori Vallow, Tom Harrison, all the people. And they're going in and out of temples like it's nobody's business, okay? But it is the church's business. They know who's coming and going. They have, I'm sure, scannable cards that know when one goes in and out of a temple. That's how we got the temple records, right? From trial. And that's just what was considered relevant to the investigation, according to one of the FBI investigators that testified at Lori's trial. So it's, what do we not know? And then I kind of want to just stay there. I just don't want to know, right? Because it's like I know enough. I see enough of the fruits, right? So what's going on there? And what I've read thus far in this case, OUR and the Ruse and Tim Ballard and all these people, all these M. Russell Ballard, the apostle, exited, left. He died last week, knocked me on my butt for a couple days because that is, in my opinion, allegedly the guy. This is M. Russell Ballard, right? He is the one that I've read about in multiple accounts of Hans Mattson and Brigitte Mattson. Tom Phillips, I learned about their stories on Mormon Stories podcast and have, never being a Mormon, not knowing vernacular, the language the Mormons speak, right? But anyways, yeah, M. Russell Ballard was the apostle for a long time. And Tom Phillips, Hans and Brigitte Mattson, in my opinion, maybe Rob Norman, whose story resembled a lot like Chad and Lori's, which I'd looked at all these different stories on Mormon Stories podcast over over the course of his interviews and everything. They all have the apostle M. Russell Ballard in common as far as being the one that would travel and would go perform these second anointings, okay? And a second anointing is basically your entry into the Church of the Firstborn. The Church of the Firstborn is basically a title. It is not a place. It is just an idea. According to David Warwick, it is invisible. Anyways, it's all a ruse, okay? It's where a second anointing also is spiritual wifery. It's polygamous. The church had to denounce polygamy just to become a part of the United States of America. And it's like in doing so, in order to say, oh yeah, by the way, God said no more polygamy, okay? It's one of our basic principles, but right now we kind of just need to become part of, the United States so we can get financial backing and everything. And, we're just going to say that we're not practicing polygamy anymore, and then we're going to bleed the beast because we want revenge. We want revenge for nobody taking Joseph Smith seriously. He is our prophet, seer, and revelator, or psychic. And you're damn well gonna respect him, right? Well, here we are, here we are. But M. Russell Ballard was there by their account, okay? By these people's accounts. And it's a secret, not so sacred. It's sacred to a practicing Mormon, a believing Mormon, but it's not to me or people like you who know better and know different and have learned different on our own, because it's not like the church has guidelines and how these things really go. They do whatever they want, when they want, and how they want. They are not a respecter of persons, in my opinion. Also, I believe that if it weren't for M. Russell Ballard and the church leadership, Chad and Lori would never have met. And I mean that. I don't have to think about it. I've thought about it for 4 years and I've researched it for 4 years because this is what I do. And because it's secret, they're never going to say it. And Chad and Lori would have taken an oath of vengeance, or a blood oath, to never release that, what they consider a charge, saying so. Because, oh my God, shit hit the fan, right? And so basically, it has nothing to do with Chad's book. It has nothing to do with that. It was set up. It was preordained, right? Foreordained, and that's why we're here. So yes, I do think it is the church's fault. I do think they hold a lot of culpability and a lot of responsibility, and they need to be held accountable, in my opinion. You can't just do things like this and then make a big mess of it while you're at it, while there's an investigation going on federal with missing children. You can't do these kind of things and not ever be held accountable. You can't mess with investigations. You can't sway members from that ward that, Rob Wood was a bishop. Chad Daybell served, I guess, under Rob Wood, I'm assuming, because I have to, as he held a calling and was a ward clerk, okay? The ward clerk works under a bishop. And then the church sent out letters or an email to leaders in the Henry Fork State area, just reminding them of a 2010 policy, just to not take and participate in investigations, because you may imply yourself, you may ruin things, basically. You might muck it up a great deal, and you definitely would implicate the church. In my opinion, it's something to those lines, right? So they're like, hey, call Kurt and McConkie first. Okay, call them first. So Rob Wood being a bishop, I just can only speculate that he called the church and he's like, bring. I'm going to do like a nuance. I would say, bring, right? And say, oh, how, I'm the bishop for this ward. I'm also the prosecutor and will become the special prosecutor. How would you like us to prosecute this case? Oh, okay, thank you. And then other ways down the line did they, in my opinion, the church, interject themselves into the investigation of my family's murders. So yeah, I'm very offended. And I know that if my mom and my dad and any other family member knew better, they would also be offended. I'm learning to, how to talk about this. It's so much and it's so intense, and you can't just come out with these kind of accusations, you can't. But it all revolves around M. Russell Ballard, okay? Which, in my opinion, is related to Tim Ballard, but we will never know, right? For Mormons being so about their lineage and genealogy, where's that info, right, on Tim Ballard? He's one of 6 children, which means if he's a Ballard, that probably means that his dad would be maybe allegedly, I don't know, Russell Ballard's son, or maybe he's a grandnephew or something. There's something there. Doesn't matter. They were still associated. In the infamous Reddit email, also, there was, which I believe is from Melanie Gibb and David Warwick, and that's what Nate Eaton used as a guideline, right? To ask questions and interview Melanie Gibb, right? A long time ago, back in 2020, right before the children were found. It said Ballard and Renlund are zombies. I don't know if you recall that, but and I actually did a video and read the infamous Reddit email out loud. I've read it, we've all read it, or for the most part, all of us have read it. It was like, what? It was so confusing, especially for a Never Mormon. We were like, who's Nephi? Who's Mathoni? And who's telling Chad that a special woman would come into his life, right? Who are all, what? What? A portal in her closet? Oh my God, I died laughing. That's also the day that JJ's mom, his real mom, his birth mom, Mandy, died. That's the day I found out that she died. So I read the infamous Reddit email on camera to distract myself from that loss, Anyway, I know I went way off topic, but it all does connect. I don't know if I'm throwing spaghetti at the wall, or I don't know if people see it too, but I'm just going to keep saying it and keep talking about it until it gets acknowledged. I did the same thing with Visions of Glory with Tom Harrison. I've not shut up. Y'all know that. I circled the wagon all the time ever since. And people were like, well, I don't see how it's associated. Well, it is. It very much is. It's a part of this story. The meeting of the minds of Chad and Lori, in my opinion, and maybe even the mission. I don't know. I just have to speculate, right? Because that's all I've got. Because I'm not, we don't get the truth from Chad, Lori, Tim. None of these people, and the ones that do come forward, they definitely don't give us the whole truth, okay? They give us their narrative. They give us what relinquishes their culpability, their responsibility, but they do not have any allegiance or anything with Chad and Lori, but they do have it with the church and protected. And it sucks because, yes, I know what it's like to have missing children. Not my own child, but my nephew, my cousin, my step-cousin. They're still children. They were in my family. They're part of my family, and they were missing. And the church did not use its huge ass platform to help find them, to raise awareness about them being missing. Instead, they poo-pooed all over this case, the investigation. My family, they poo-pooed all over my family, in my opinion. That is how I think that M. Russell Ballard connects here, and I don't know how else to break that nicely. All right, based on the information Blaze News has received from eight former OUR associates, Russon has had undue influence on Ballard and therefore on OUR operations for many years, perhaps even a decade. I didn't know I read all this already. These witnesses uniformly told us that Ballard speaks to Russon almost daily, sometimes even multiple times per day. One individual guessed that during some busy period, Russon worked nearly 80 hours a week, providing psychic intel to Ballard. Another joked that Ballard never uses the bathroom without consulting her first. Well, hardy har, right? So funny. These former OUR associates have spoken to Blaze News about Russon on the condition of anonymity. In some cases, they fear violating a non-disclosure agreement, which is something that they learn from the damn church, okay? That's how they operate too. They will settle with a lot of these abuse victims and stuff out of court, that they use their 1-800-LDS helpline, hotline to report abuse. People think, people on the outside, like myself, believed that at first glance, you're like, oh, wow, the church has a hotline this is awesome. This is good. Wow, they're pro helping victims, and people who are affected by that within their organization. But then you peel it back just one layer, you take one little second look at it, okay? Operation Double Take. And then you're like, holy crap, this is not at all what it appears to be. It is all a ruse, in my opinion. And so then they use this Curtin McConkie, the same one that has been used and interjected themselves throughout Lori and Chad's cases, my family's cases, during times of competency for Lori, which I highly suspect even happened. I don't believe that she was ever incompetent. I'm not the only one that believes that. And you can clearly see what was going on there with that situation. So I forgot what I was saying or why I was even going there, but the non-disclosure agreements. And so whenever someone settles out of court with the church, they get them to sign non-disclosure agreements, meaning they cannot reveal what happened, how much the church paid, how, the details. They cannot, nobody on the outside can learn what really happens. We can't, if they don't go to court and they're not part of court record and they're not available, if they're sealed, we are veiled from that. Okay. Which sucks because that allows, we could maybe see more and more and more how this church operates, or big corporations just like it. Okay. They all pretty much behave the same way. It's all about themselves and their image and just the ruse. It's all about the ruse. Okay. Let's get back on track. Others are concerned about their own safety, right? And that's just for that. That has nothing to do with murder and kids and da 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 da, right? Second anointings and just imagine. These are just people that have knowledge. Others are concerned about their own safety or possible community or professional fallout from their ties with Ballard and or his allies. Okay. To establish the extent of Russon's impact on Ballard's life and OUR's work, Blaze News here attempts to lay out a rather complicated story grounded in the tragic kidnapping of a young boy that involves Russon's supposed paranormal sight. And I have this just one of those questions because I don't have the definition, or I don't have all that right here at my fingertips. I can, but I mean, again, all these things take so much time because, I want to get a better understanding. And I think that's important. Okay. But what is the difference in a psychic and telling everybody in the church that they are seers, prophets, and revelators, and that they have one living prophet, seer, and revelator who doesn't really have this prophecy? It's bullshit. Okay. So what's the difference? If anybody knows, please let me know. It is so full of intrigue that members of Ballard's inner circle have recently contacted Blaze Media Management and even family members of key Blaze employees to try to shut this story down. Efforts that ultimately were in vain. So a very sheltered looking soccer mom-ish woman from Utah, who is Janet Russon. By all accounts, Janet Russon, who's 60, appears to be an unassuming wife, mother, and faithful member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. One former OUR associate who went on an operation with Russon once described her as a quote, very sheltered looking soccer momish woman from Utah, unquote. A description that matches those given by many sources who spoke with Blaze News. Russon, a Connecticut native, right? You know who else was from Connecticut? That would be Serena Sharp, one of the inner circle for Chad and Lori. And Sherry Dowdle, I think, who is a woman that Melanie Gibb contacted via Facebook and told her a different version of how my family's murders happened, right? Like it was just the latest goss, So infuriating, right? All right, so she's lived in Utah for some time. She also appears to have a passion for helping orphaned children find adoptive homes. That's because she's in affiliation. She's on the board of members for and with Catherine Ballard, who is Tim Ballard's wife. And it's Children Need Families. And I looked on it probably midweek last week, and she was still on it. So there's that. It's not a registered nonprofit. The whiteboard meeting that Lynn Packer has dubbed as and broke the story on. In my opinion, he is the reason why this story has gained traction. Prosecuting attorney Troy Rawlings, those two that really have pushed this and got it to gain its traction, like it should have a long time ago. People just let it not fact check because it involved Tim Ballard and Apostle M. Russell Ballard, who's going around soliciting, allegedly, donors through the church. And maybe he didn't release a donor list. Probably not. I doubt there was a damn donor list. I don't know the origins of that, but it doesn't matter. You still know who's who in those circles, I mean, the rich and the famous, they're gonna birds of a feather flock together. There's Paul Hutchinson, on video saying, how you throw parties that are rich and famous, you invite the rich and famous. So I don't know what he says exactly, but it's something along those lines. And that's because they all travel in the same circles. Okay. They know who's who. And so for Russell Ballard, the now late prophet, seer, revelator, who was in the leadership of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, died last week, allegedly reached out to Russell Brunson and was like, hey, there's this great cause. It's called OUR, Operation Underground Railroad. And this is Timmy. And I meet with Timmy once a month for 10 years. I give them special priesthood blessings. You know, there's word out there that it's okay for the couple's ruse, which is stupid. A lot of this logic comes from the church, in my opinion. It's backwards, which, I mean, look at Jody Hildebrand.